How's it going, everybody? Something different today. Excuse the glasses, they're anti-blue light glasses. I just have a headache today, so something different today. Anyway, instead of a Reddit video, I wanted to make a video exploring the studies and research done proving that vaccines are safe and the efficacy of vaccines far outweighs the risks of not vaccinating. I wanted to look at the lack of scientific evidence supporting anti-vax and the downright disgusting views on mental disorders that are held and perpetuated by the anti-vax community. Honestly, it's pretty bad. Now, to start with, I have a little statement, something properly worded and scripted that I feel the need to say, and I wanted to word it as best as I could, so that's how we're going to start this. So let's pretend for a second that I humour the argument and believe that vaccines cause autism in 0.01% of children. First of all, 0.5% of all polio cases lead to paralysis and potentially death, which is 50 times more likely than injury from the vaccine. Your child could be paralyzed for life from polio. What deeply, deeply disturbs me is that you people are far more afraid of people with disabilities than you are of painful, fatal, and endemic diseases. If cognitive disabilities are more threatening to you than your child never growing up because your movement brings back polio, then please never have children because your priorities are way off. And please actually research what autism is. Shame on you for brainwashing and perpetuating the belief that autism is a fate worse than death. The autistic people I know in person would be disgusted at the fact that you would rather see them dead than see them as alive and well as they are. All of this on top of the fact that vaccines do not cause autism. Now that we have my little speech out of the way, let's look at some actual studies, and we'll also look at some of the anti-vax studies that were just outright proven incorrect, and in certain cases, even faked. My first source is going to be a page that people twist and warp to suit their views a lot, the CDC. Now, I'm getting this from the official CDC page, and I will supply links in the description to every page that I source from so that you can read them for yourself and you can see that the information I'm taking is not just out of context and that these pages support the belief that vaccines are safe. If you see a CDC quote on an anti-vax page that isn't from the official CDC site, then you most definitely cannot trust the source, because people absolutely love linking pages to forged CDC stuff that was never actually mentioned by the CDC, because it proves that the CDC think vaccines aren't safe. Should you have any concerns to this link, to vaccine safety CDC, there are hundreds of studies. We are talking about 30 every year for the last 20 years on this page. I'm naturally not going to show them all. The source to this will be down below, so you can look through all of these if you want. I'm just looking at the ones that mention specifically autism, because that is the primary argument here. Now, there are a lot more studies talking about the safety of vaccines and stuff, but I did a word search for autism, and we're going to be looking at those. Epidemiological studies, however, have not found an association between the MMR vaccine and autism. The findings are consistent with current understanding of the pathogenesis of autism, which has a strong genetic component in which the neurological defects probably occur early in the embryonic development. It seems unlikely that a vaccine that is given after birth could cause autism. A minority of cases of autism may have onset after 1 year of age, regressive autism, but the single epidemiological study that included such cases did not find an association with MMR vaccination. Currently, the weight of the available epidemiological and related evidence does not support a causal association between MMR vaccine or any other vaccine constituent and autism. I have more. I'm taking off my jacket, it's way too warm. The conclusion is, in this study, MCO members increasing exposure to antibody-stimulating proteins and polysaccharides in vaccines during the first 2 years of life was not related to the risk of developing an ASD, which is autism. CDC MMR3. The study included 3,729 children with ASD. For vaccines recommended between ages 4 and 6 years, children with ASD were significantly less likely to be fully vaccinated compared with children without ASD. Within each age category, vaccination rates were significantly lower among younger siblings of children with ASD compared with younger siblings of children without ASD. The adjusted rate ratios varied from 0.6 for siblings younger than 1 year to 0.96 for those 11 to 12 years old. Parents who had a child with ASD were more likely to refuse at least one recommended vaccine for the child's younger sibling and to limit number of vaccines administered during the younger sibling's first year of life. Conclusion and relevance: children with ASD and their younger siblings were under-vaccinated compared with the general population. The results of this study suggest that children with ASD and their younger siblings are at increased risk of vaccine-preventable diseases. Basically, the children with autism have less vaccines than the children without. All that means is that they are at more risk of getting preventable illnesses and potentially dying because their parents are idiots and think that their already autistic child is going to be affected by a vaccine that doesn't cause autism. But wait, there's more. Autism is a developmental disability that can cause significant social, communication, and behavioral challenges. A report published in 1998 but subsequently retracted by the journal suggested that measles, mumps, and rubella MMR vaccine causes autism. However, the autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that has a strong genetic component with genesis before 1 year of age, when MMR vaccine is typically administered. Several epidemiologic studies have not found an association between MMR vaccines and autism, including a study that found that MMR vaccine was not associated with an increased risk of autism, even among high-risk children whose older siblings had autism. Despite strong evidence of its safety, some parents are still hesitant to accept the MMR vaccine of their children. Decreasing acceptance of the MMR vaccine has led to outbreaks or resurgence of measles. Healthcare providers have a vital role in maintaining confidence in vaccination and preventing suffering, disability, and death from measles and other vaccine-preventable diseases. There is no correlation. Now, the next page I have is public health, with studies disproving a lot of myths about vaccines. Again, the link is in the description. This is quite a long one, so buckle up. This is going to be a very long video. Myth 1. Vaccines cause autism. The widespread fear that vaccines increase risk of autism originated with a 1998 study published by Andrew Wakefield. Remember that name, we'll be back to him. A British surgeon. The paper has since been completely discredited due to serious procedural errors, undisclosed financial conflicts of interest, and ethical violations. Andrew Wakefield lost his medical license, and the paper was retracted from the Lancet. Nonetheless, the hypothesis was taken seriously, and several other major studies were conducted. None of them found a link between any vaccine and the likelihood of developing autism. Myth 2. Infant immune systems can't handle so many vaccines. Infant immune systems are stronger than you might think. Based on the number of antibodies present in the blood, a baby would theoretically have the ability to respond to around 10,000 vaccines at one time. Even if all 14 scheduled vaccines were given at once, it would only use up slightly more than 0.1% of the baby's immune capacity. The immune system could never truly be overwhelmed because the cells in the system are constantly being replenished. In reality, babies are exposed to countless bacteria and viruses every day, and immunizations are negligible in comparison. Though there are more vaccines than ever before, today's vaccines are far more efficient. Small children are actually exposed to fewer immunologic components overall than children in past decades. So, myth 2, vaccines actually present you with less of the virus and less risks than they used to. Myth 3, natural immunity is better than vaccine-acquired immunity. In some cases, natural immunity, meaning actually catching a disease and getting sick, results in a stronger immunity to the disease than a vaccination. However, the dangers of this approach far outweigh the relative benefits. If you want to gain immunity to measles, for example, by contracting the disease, you would face a 1 in 500 chance of death from your symptoms. In contrast, the number of people who have had severe allergic reactions from an MMR vaccine is less than 1 in a million. The risks are drastically higher from getting a disease than they are from getting a vaccine. Myth 5. Vaccines contain unsafe toxins. People have concerns over the use of formaldehyde, mercury, or aluminium in vaccines. It's true that these chemicals are toxic to the human body in certain levels, but only trace amounts of these chemicals are used in FDA-approved vaccines. In fact, according to the FDA and the CDC, formaldehyde is produced at higher rates by our own metabolic systems, and there is no scientific evidence that low levels of this chemical, mercury, or aluminium in vaccines can be harmful. They even have, see section 3 of this guide, they have a little guide. The link to this is in the description, so you can check the guide out yourself. Basically, it checks through all of these chemicals that are in vaccines and says the amounts of these in the vaccines are so low that they have no effect on the human body. Myth 5. Better hygiene and sanitation are actually responsible for the decrease in infections, not vaccines. Vaccines don't deserve all the credit for reducing or eliminating rates of infectious diseases. Better sanitation, nutrition, and the development of antibiotics helped a lot too, but when these factors are isolated and rates of infectious diseases are scrutinized, the role of vaccines cannot be denied. One example is measles in the United States. When the first measles vaccine was introduced in 1963, rates of infection had been holding steady at around 400,000 cases a year, and while hygienic habits and sanitation didn't change much over the following decade, the rate of measles infections dropped precipitously following the introduction of the vaccine, with only around 25,000 cases by 1970. Another example is hip disease. According to the CDC data, the incidence rate for this malady plummeted from 20,000 in 1990 to around 1,500 in 1993, following the introduction of the vaccine. Myth 6. Vaccines aren't worth the risk. Despite parent concerns, children have been successfully vaccinated for decades. In fact, there has never been a single credible study linking vaccines to long-term health conditions. As for immediate danger from vaccines in the form of allergic reactions or severe side effects, the incidence of death are so rare that they can't even truly be calculated. For example, only 1 death was reported to the CDC between 1990 and 1992 that was attributable to a vaccine. The overall incidence rate for a severe allergic reaction to vaccines is usually placed around 1 case for every 1 or 2 million injections. Basically, there's essentially no risk, so they are worth it. Myth 7. Vaccines can infect my child with the disease it's trying to prevent. Vaccines can cause mild symptoms resembling those of the disease they are protecting against. A common misconception is that these symptoms signal infection. In fact, in the small percentage, less than 1 in 1 million cases, where symptoms do occur, the vaccine recipients are experiencing a body's immune response to the vaccine, not the disease itself. There is only 1 recorded instance in which a vaccine was shown to cause disease. This was the oral polio vaccine, which is no longer used in the US. Since then, vaccines have been in safe use for decades and follow strict Food and Drug Administration regulations. And the final myth from this page: we don't need to vaccinate because infection rates are already so low in the United States. Thanks to herd immunity, so long as a large majority of people are immunized in any population, even the unimmunized minority will be protected. With so many people resistant, an infectious disease will never get a chance to establish itself and spread. This is important because there will always be a portion of the population, infants, pregnant women, elderly, and those with weakened immune systems that can't receive vaccines. But if too many people don't vaccinate themselves or their children, they contribute to a collective danger, opening up opportunities for viruses and bacteria to establish themselves and spread. Not to mention, as the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, warn, international travel is growing quickly. So even if a disease is not a threat in your country, it may be common elsewhere. If someone were to carry in a disease from abroad, an unvaccinated individual will be at far greater risk of getting sick if he or she is exposed. Basically, a lot of the time, vaccinations are not just for you, they are for other people. Definitely get a vaccination for yourself. You don't want to get measles, you don't want to get polio, you don't want to get other deadly preventable diseases. At the same time, there are people out there that are physically unable to get those vaccinations. if you create a community of people that refuse to get vaccinations and start bringing back these illnesses, the people at risk that don't want those viruses are going to be at risk because of your stupidity. Now, you might be at home saying, Blue, you sure have spoken a lot of words, but that's only 2 websites. And yes, that's true, which is why I have 3 more. So, the next website is Healthy Children. The link, again, is down in the description. Here we have vaccines are not associated with autism, an evidence-based meta-analysis of case control and cohort studies, and increasing exposure to antibody-stimulating proteins and polysaccharides in vaccines is not associated with risks of autism. So now that's 3 sources. Now we have the AAP, which says, a study published today in the Journal of the American Medical Association offers more reassuring evidence for the safety of childhood immunization schedule. Glanz and colleagues from the Vaccine Safety Data Link conducted a nested case control study of nearly 500,000 children to determine if exposure to multiple vaccines in early childhood was associated with an increased risk of infections that weren't targeted by the vaccines. The VSD, funded by Center of Disease Control and Prevention, conducts a large epidemic, I hate that word, studies of vaccine safety using electronic health record databases. However, studies continue to demonstrate the safety of childhood vaccines have not translated into increased public confidence. Indeed, despite the work of the VSD, rates of vaccine refusal and vaccine delay have increased over time. It is clear that providing factual information to parents is not enough. Engaging healthcare providers and public health messaging regarding vaccine effectiveness and safety also are paramount in promoting the positive impact of vaccines on child health. I'm doing a lot of reading, so sorry if I'm messing up. Basically what this is saying is that for some reason parents are rejecting fact to a dangerous degree, so we need to help bring awareness to parents for the actual safety in vaccines and the safety in preventing viruses that you really don't want your child to have. Look at the facts, people. We also have Stat News. This is the final source, the 5th source. A massive new study from Denmark found no association between being vaccinated against measles, mumps, and rubella and developing autism. In science and public health circles, that issue has long since been considered settled, with multiple studies over many years discounting the findings of a small study published more than 20 years ago that has been since expunged from medical literature. The study is not even considered to be true, and it has literally been redacted by the people that made it. I don't understand how people still believe that it causes autism when the guy that made it pulled it back. The idea that vaccines cause autism is still going around, and the anti-vax movement, if anything, has perhaps grown stronger over the last 15 years, he told Stat. The trend that we're seeing is worrying. 6 measles outbreaks are currently ongoing in the United States, with 206 cases reported in January and February, according to the CDC. That 2-month total is higher than the entire year's tally for 2017. You don't need to bring back preventable diseases because you think there's a risk of your child getting autism. And even if there is a risk of your child getting autism, what do you think autism is going to do to your child? Autism is not a fate worse than getting measles or polio. It's a normal thing. So many children have it. And the reason that so many people are being detected for having it is because we're just better at detecting it now. Autism isn't a problem. Now, if my sources, studies, and proof are not enough for you, then I think it's time we look at the anti-vax side of things. From what I've established, there are 2 people that led the charge, and are referenced a lot by anti-vaxxers. I mean, you could say I'm an authority on this. I've done like 8 videos on anti-vax stuff now. And the 2 people I've seen occur most are Andrew Wakefield and Andrew Molden. Funnily enough, they're both called Andrew. I don't know what's up with that. Let's first look at Andrew Wakefield. Now, it's very clear that Wakefield was a very naughty boy and was just in it for the money. A fact I find extremely ironic and outright hilarious when one of the anti-vax leading conspiracies is that Big Pharma are only pushing vaccines for money and power, yet your pioneering scientist led biased and false research for money. Now let's take a look at a few statements about it in his Wikipedia page. Basically, he tried to link the MMR vaccine to Crohn's disease in a study in 1998, concluding that the measles virus did not cause Crohn's disease and neither did the MMR vaccine. So his first study proven wrong. Now we have the second part. He continued to promote the theory of a link between the MMR vaccine and autism, despite admitting that it was not proved. He resigned from Thoughtful House in 2010 after the British, I need to zoom in, General Medical Council found that he had been dishonest and irresponsible in conducting his early autism research in England. Wakefield is barred from practicing as a physician in the UK and is not licensed in the US. He's literally not allowed to be a doctor anymore. Following an investigation of the allegations in the Sunday Times by the UK GMC, Wakefield was charged with serious professional misconduct, including dishonesty. In December 2006, Dear, writing in the Sunday Times, further reported that in addition to the money they gave the Royal Free Hospital, the lawyers responsible for the MMR lawsuit had paid Wakefield personally more than £400,000, which he had not previously disclosed. 24 hours before the 2004 Sunday Times report by Dear, the Lancet editor Richard Horton responded to the investigation in a public statement describing Wakefield's research as fatally flawed, and said he believed the paper would have been rejected as biased if the peer reviews had been aware of Wakefield's conflict of interest. 10 of Wakefield's 12 co-authors of the paper in the Lancet later published a retraction of an interpretation. The section of the paper retracted read as follows. Interpretation. We identified associated gastrointestinal disease and developmental regression in a group of previously normal children, which was generally associated in the time with possible environmental triggers. The retraction stated, "We wish to make it clear that in this paper, no causal link was established between the vaccine and autism, as the data was insufficient. However, the possibility of such a link was raised, and consequent events have had major implications for public health. In view of this, we consider now is the appropriate time that we should together formally retract the interpretation placed upon these findings in the paper according to precedent." The people that wrote the paper themselves said there is no link to this vaccine and autism. The fact that people think there is a link to this vaccine and autism is dangerous and is causing danger to the public, and so we were retracting this statement in the hope that people will start vaccinating their children and stop bringing back deadly viruses. People ignored them because they are very stupid, and for some reason they still think that this statement is correct. I mean, if someone goes, "Oh, my bad, I was wrong," you accept that they were wrong and move on. You don't go, no, I still believe that you were correct because my child has autism and that means that I should drown them in the river because autism is that bad apparently. Don't be a parent if this is your belief. Autism isn't bad. Oh boy. Okay, right, so the second man is Andrew Molden, a gentleman that I have previously looked into in a video. In fact, the last Vax Happened video we looked into Andrew Molden, but I'm going to have a look at him anyway, because oh boy is this man a doozy. Molden was a denier of germ theory of disease, and in its place has concocted his own theory for the causes of all illnesses that only he has discovered. Molden claims that his marathon academic efforts have been culminated in discoveries that upon my disclosures will change our knowledge of neurophysiological medicine and brain and behavioral disorders in profound ways that will immediately end much human pain and suffering globally. The great secret? Apparently all disease was caused by white blood cells clumping. Vaccines cause white blood cells to clump. Therefore, vaccines cause all illness, according to this man. Counter to his claim to be the sole source of this finding, Molden said that the truth has been known for a long time and was discovered by Rudolf Virchow in the mid-19th century. Virchow was the first person to propose that pulmonary thromboembolism was caused by a blood clot. Molden merely took the singular case proposed by Virchow and makes the logical leap that if it was true of one disease, then all disease must be based on blood clots. At this point, it should be obvious why Andrew Molden was not licensed to practice medicine. Molden blamed all disease on blood clots and then claimed all blood clots are caused by white blood cells reacting to the injection of vaccines. How disease existed prior to the use of vaccines, or how disease emerges in people who have not received vaccines, was not elucidated in Molden's all-encompassing, earth-shattering theories. Molden had very little use for the science or the scientific method. He said that science can never replace common sense and your own powers of direct observation. He has also rejected peer review or substantial clinical trials of his ideas or interventions, discounting the whole thing as an exercise in futility and claiming limited resources make it not worth bothering with. This complete reliance on anecdotal evidence and refusal to submit his ideas to any sort of scrutiny makes them an ideal example of pseudoscience. Are you getting the point yet? Because we're not done. As with all quacks, Molden had a highly developed persecution complex. He made all the classic cliche comparisons of himself to Galileo and Christopher Columbus, who, according to Molden, proved the Earth was round. No. Molden claimed to have submitted several screeds as manuscripts to university publishers and had them denied. He also claims that he managed to use lawsuit threats to force the universities to at least receive his manuscripts, but that it is merely collecting dust. He also apparently turned dangerous against the medical community. Molden said with great pride that he had been physically removed from the medical facilities and has a restraining order that prevents him from getting anywhere near major medical conferences. He's literally banned from even going near science. And we're still not done. Molden claimed to have a cutting-edge medical imaging system that can detect the early stages of just about every disease imaginable. Playing on people's fears and vulnerability, Molden pushed the idea that he can diagnose sudden infant death syndrome before it happened. To shorten this, because I can't be bothered to read it all, he sold DVDs and such with the secrets of detecting these illnesses, all false. Basically, he is another example of someone that was drastically in it for the money and was spreading plenty of lies. On November 4th, 2013, Andrew Molden died. An individual reported to be his sister posted a Facebook message stating that my brother was bipolar and it was consuming his life. Drew committed suicide on Monday. Not to speak ill of the dead, but it is very clear that Molden had no qualifications, his studies were spurious at best, and he was consumed by bipolar, showing that he was extremely unhealthy mentally and that his conspiracies were no more than the ravings of a madman without a cause. I don't really need to say more, so that's where I'm going to end the video. I hope you can take the information I have given you and form a sensible opinion. Vaccines save lives. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you liked this video and want to support me in making more content like this, then I have a Patreon. I have nothing more to say, so I will see you in the next video. Peace out.